So you send your children to a Montessori preschool. I am a former early childhood educator and Montessori guide who spent over a decade in the field working directly in classrooms, observing classrooms, and coaching other educators. And so I decided to create a little mini series to help parents find the best care for their children. So, with that being said, I decided to start with Montessori because it's kind of a trending topic, I guess, right now. A lot of parents want to enroll their children in Montessori schools, thinking that Montessori is going to be the best. So let's talk about it. What is Montessori? Montessori was created by a woman called Marie Montessori. In a Montessori classroom, you will see 5 different areas. There will be practical life, sensorial, um, math, language, culture, and science. And if it's an authentic Montessori program, all of the teachers will also be trained in Montessori classroom, you will see the practical life area. That area of the classroom is going to be to help children focus, concentrate, develop responsibility, things like that. You'll see sewing, you'll see spooning, tonguing, washing chairs, washing tables, all that kind of stuff. Sensorial area, you'll see like the pink tower, you'll see things like the binomial cube here, um, various other very specific Montessori materials. This is where it kind of gets a little tricky because a lot of things are marketed as Montessori, but they are not actually Montessori. So, like Love Every is highly marketed as Montessori. There's nothing wrong with Love Every. I love Love Every. I have lots of their toys and their kits, but it's not an authentic Montessori material, so you will not find Love Every materials in an authentic Montessori classroom. Another thing that would often be marketed as something that is Montessori, this is not Montessori. It's fantastic. I love it. We have it, but it is not an authentic Montessori material. And it's important to note that Montessori materials in an infant toddler classroom compared to Montessori materials in um, a preschool classroom or an early elementary classroom, they will all look very different. So they're not going to be the same, but they will be the authentic Montessori material. When we talk about sensorial, it's important to note that we're not talking about sensory, it's sensorial. So in a Montessori classroom, the sensorial is actually a precursor to math. Sensory in most other preschool classrooms is like kinetic sand, Play-Doh, things like that. Now, in a Montessori classroom, you will find Play-Doh, but it'll likely be in the practical life area where they can be focusing on developing their fine motor skills. So there will also be like geography, zoology, botany. They'll learn the continents, the parts of a fish, parts of a tree, parts of a root, things like that. That will all be in their culture or science area. There's math and language, and this is probably kind of where like the hallmark in Montessori gets sold because oftentimes children are reading younger and excelling in math earlier than other traditional settings. Now, there is a caveat with that because it's kind of a double-edged sword. So for a child who is already interested in numbers and they're already kind of excelling from a younger age, that's just who they are, then they'll go much further with that so long as they have an appropriate Montessori guide to bring them through that. So then, it wouldn't be uncommon for them to get to like multiplication and division before they turn 6 years old. And the same goes for language. If you have early readers, it wouldn't be uncommon for them to be fluently reading by the time they're 6. There are some important things to know. Um, it's important to know that some Montessori guides, in my experience, kind of favor the math and language, and they will push that on children. So you could have maybe a 5-year-old who has already spent extensive time in practical life, and the teacher or the guide rather feels that it's more important for that child to focus on language. And so if a child goes to take something out from practical life, maybe some sewing or something like that, I have seen in my experience teachers say, no, we won't focus on that now. Let's go work on our sounds.
On the other hand, as a parent, you might think that you're going to bring your child to a Montessori classroom and they will be reading fluently and doing extensive math in a very short amount of time, like 3 months or something. I've had instances where parents came up to me and said, how come my child is not reading yet after they've been with us for 6 months? And it's not realistic because we really want to focus on the practical life and making sure that they have the foundations. Um, in the classroom first. So you need to understand that as a parent before enrolling your child, that if you are hoping that they're going to be excelling in math and language very soon, it probably won't happen like that, because in a Montessori classroom, it's very much focusing on the foundations and building them up. So this is where I want to kind of talk about some of the other things about Montessori that are not super well known. So Montessori is very rigid and it's very strict in a sense where every single material is done in a very specific way, and in only that way is it permitted to be done. As an example, this is the binomial cube. It is meant to only be built a certain way, which is the way that you can see that it is in this box, and no other way. So it wouldn't be permitted for a child to stack them or build a structure with them or something like that. And so since I also have my roots in play-based classrooms and I'm also familiar with Reggio classrooms, I have my own feelings about that. In the Montessori classroom, everything is very structured, it's very scientific, and it's very factual. So yes, your child will walk away knowing higher math. Yes, they will walk away knowing how to read. They will know all the parts of a fish. They will know all the parts of a turtle. They will know all the parts of a root. They will know how a tree grows, things like that. But there is no free play and no imagination and no exploration and no creativity. So I have seen children come into Montessori classrooms and not flourish because those children needed more open-ended play. At the same time, I've seen children come into Montessori classrooms and absolutely flourish because they need that very specific structure and way of doing things. So for children who need freedom, and not freedom of like movement and choice, but freedom of how they're going to do things, those out of the box kind of children, the creative children, imaginative children, maybe a Montessori classroom is not going to be the best fit. And I know that there's a lot of Montessori guides, actually most Montessori guides, who will say that Montessori is for everyone. In my experience, it is not. If your child is a child who likes structure, predictability, sameness, Montessori, yes, 100%, because they will get that in the classroom. Now, there are some cases where within a Montessori classroom, you can have very flexible teachers. I would say I was one of them when I was in the classroom, probably because my roots were play-based before they were Montessori, before I was Montessori trained, that they're very flexible. And I think that is a major green flag in a Montessori classroom. Because if you can have the structure and the sameness and the predictability, but be willing to be flexible for the child and the different children that enter a program, then that is going to be a fantastic program for all the children that are there. So when you're on your hunt and you're looking for a program, it's not just the program that is being sold. You also need to meet the teachers, because the teachers are going to be what makes the program. You can have a fantastic program philosophy on paper, and if the teachers are not aligned with that, the program will not be fantastic. At the same time, you can have a program that is less fantastic on paper and have super fantastic teachers, and the program will be fantastic. So if you are a parent and you are looking at a Montessori program, when you walk in the Montessori program, you're going to look, do they have authentic Montessori materials? Authentic Montessori materials will look like this. They will look like this. They will look like this. Of course, there's others, but those are some examples. So do they have authentic Montessori materials? Is there a practical life area, a sensorial area, math area, language, culture area? You're going to ask the manager or the teachers, whoever's doing your tour, what is the training of these educators? Because they all should have some Montessori training. You're going to ask them if they have a 3-hour work period, because that is also a hallmark of the Montessori classroom. You want to have a 3-hour work period where the children can choose the materials that they're going to work on and work on that. They're not working on the same material for 3 hours, but they have the flexibility to choose whatever they want to work on and work on it for as long as they want within that 3-hour period. So their work is not being interrupted. That is a very important piece of a Montessori classroom. You're going to ask them if they use real materials like glass and porcelain and wood. You're going to ask the teachers specifically if they're flexible to meet the child where they're at. And lastly, this is probably most important, I think, if you are able to do this, to sit in the classroom. Not all programs will allow this, but the program that I used to work in would allow it, to have the parents sit in the classroom before their child is enrolled. So you are sitting there like a fly on the wall, observing the classroom in action to see what happens. This is going to be the best way you're going to learn about the program. Then you're also going to ask if there's an information night, and where you can meet the teachers, ask questions, see how materials are presented, see why they are presented that way, and see if there's anything that you can be doing at home to support. When you have gathered all this information, then you will be able to make an educated decision on if a Montessori program is right for your child. One thing that I do feel like it's important to share, because I am a Christian myself, I wasn't when I used to be working in the classroom, but I am now. And I have recently found out that Marie Montessori was a theosophist. So you have to do your own research on that and do what you want with that. So if you are a Christian parent, you may want to research Theosophy and Marie Montessori before enrolling your child into a program. And I'm going to say this at probably the end of every video I make over the next 30 days, but the best program is the program that follows the child, leans into their interests, leans into their strengths, and builds their program upon that for all of the children in the program, whether Montessori or not. So thanks for joining for day one. Tomorrow is day two. We'll be kind of speaking about Waldorf, which is a whole different world than Montessori, contrary to popular belief. So see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.